Hello, and welcome to Drawing for Watercolor Artists, Session 4 on ellipses. Well, what are ellipses? And that's what we're going to talk about and how to draw them. So, ellipses are just circles, but circles that we're seeing tilted back, we're seeing across the surface rather than directly on the surface. So, when they tilt back like this, they start to become what we call ellipses. And drawing these can be a little tricky. That's what we're going to talk about today, is how we can make them work for us and not be so tricky. So let's get started. So what is an ellipse? An ellipse is a circle that is tilted away from us so that it starts to turn into something else, which we call an ellipse. But it's always a circle, right? But you're just seeing it across space instead of flat. That's what an ellipse is. It's not an oval like these pills. It's not an oval like this egg. Both of those can never be circles. If we look at this cup, we look at it straight on. It's a circle. As it tilts away from us, it turns into a thinner and thinner ellipse. Same thing on the bottom. This is an ellipse too, of course. And this little bowl, same thing. If I tilt it, it becomes a thinner and thinner ellipse. The bottom of it is also a circle and is also an ellipse until we see it straight on. Now, a cylinder is just a series of ellipses stacked on top of each other. If I turn this can, you'll start to see the ellipse form at the top, correct? Right there. But if I hold it so that your eye level is absolutely even with the top, you get a straight line. And you only get that straight line when the top of the circular object is at your eye level. And of course, when we tilt it, we start to get an ellipse. And the more that we're looking down at the circle, the wider the ellipse gets. So as I am able to look down on it more and more on a straight on view, it becomes closer and closer to being a circle. Now, when I turn it like this, I can see the front ellipse and the back ellipse. And that back ellipse goes all the way around. It's the outside edge of this can, and that continues, right, on the inside of the can. So if I were drawing this, I would just draw a circle right through the edges of the can so that I would make sure that I placed that bottom exactly where it needed to be. Now, of course, the bottom is also a circle. So as I tilt it away from me, it also becomes an ellipse. Now, any cylindrical object is a stack of ellipses on top of each other, but they're not all the same. Remember, there's your eye level. This is a little bit above my eye level, and this part down here is below my eye level. I'm looking down at it. So that ellipse at the bottom is going to be wider than the one at the top, where I'm looking almost straight onto it. But when I'm looking down, it's going to be wider. Does that make sense? Let's look at this some more. So your eye level is wherever you're looking straight ahead, just like what we were talking about with perspective. Above your eye level, the ellipses will start out thin and get wider and wider as they go above your eye level. Below your eye level, they'll start out as thin ellipses and they'll get wider and wider as you look down at them. Eventually, the one that's completely straight above your head would be a complete circle, and the one that's completely down on the floor would be a complete circle. Is this making more sense? If we look at this beautiful jar of jelly beans, you can see that our eye level is somewhere in the middle of the jar, and the ellipses get wider as we go up. And then from the eye level, they also start out thin and get wider as we look down. So look at that bottom ellipse. That's pretty much the widest ellipse on this image. So we're going to take a look at a few images here and see if we can figure out where the eye level is. Now, when we're dealing with real life, we know where our eye level is because it's where our eyes are. So it's pretty easy to understand when something is below our eye level or above our eye level. But in a photograph, it can get a little confusing. And really what we're looking for is where was the camera? In the case of a photograph, the camera is the eye level. So, why is this important? Because when you're looking at a photograph that has an object that is circular or cylindrical, and you're going to need to draw an ellipse, knowing where the eye level is going to give you a million clues about what to do next. So when we look at this photograph of a coffee mug, where do you think the eye level is? So look at the top and bottom ellipses of the mug, look at the coaster, and see if you can figure it out. I'll give you a few moments. So if you notice that the top of the mug is almost a straight line, and that indicated that the eye level was somewhere along the top of the mug, you were right. Let's try this again. So we're not going to look at the mug on the left, just the mug on the right. Where is the eye level line for the mug on the right? I'll give you a few moments. If you said the eye level line was a little bit above the cup, you'd be right. If it was much further above the cup, the ellipse would be much wider. Let's try this photograph. Where do you think the eye level is here? A clue? Look at the bottle in the back. The eye level line would have to be above the bottle, correct? In order to see that little thin ellipse at the top of the bottle, the eye level would have to be above that. Probably in this case, above the photograph. Okay, we've got two more. These two get a little trickier. Where is the eye level in this photograph? So the eye level line has to be under the lampshade because we're looking up under it and we're looking at the bottom of the lampshade, right? And it's a pretty wide ellipse. That width that we're talking about, we're going to be calling the minor axis. So that minor axis is pretty wide. It's not narrow. So that drops the eye level down some more because ellipses get wider or the minor axis gets wider the further away we get from the eye level line. Okay, this is the trickiest one. We're looking down on these cups of coffee. Give it a few seconds of thought. I'll give you some time. You probably didn't get this one. It's super tricky. Your eye level line is actually perpendicular to the cup of coffee. In this case, it's a vertical, not a horizontal. Now, you don't have to make a big deal of that, but just pointing out that when you're looking directly down or directly up at an ellipse, it becomes a circle and it flattens out. Your eye level line is perpendicular with it. Now, I know that both of these cups of coffee look like they're both perfect circles, but I put a circle around the bottom cup of coffee in a white line, and I copied it and pasted it on top of the top cup of coffee. And can you see that the top cup of coffee is a little bit squished from a circle? It is a little bit off because it is in a different placement from your eye. You're looking directly down at the one on the left, but you're starting to just start to look across the one on the right. This is where your new skills of measuring really come in handy so you can double check these things. For example, are they both actually the same width circle or is one of them starting to be an ellipse? I did the same thing here, but in reverse. I made the circle of the top cup of coffee and I copied it and pasted it on the bottom one. And so you can see in reverse here that the bottom cup of coffee, the circle is wider. It's actually a perfect circle or almost a perfect circle. Now, I know when you look at an image like this, you think, wow, how do you draw something looking straight down? But check this out. If you were to draw both ellipses on both mugs and then connect the far left and right hand sides of the major axis, that is the center point of the long side, the left to right line that you would draw through it. If you connected those two ellipses, then you would have drawn the sides of the mug, and then you would just erase those center parts of the ellipses that you drew. So really what the problem is that your brain tells you, "Oh my goodness, this is like really hard. It's looking down." But if you focus on what you see instead of what you know, a lot of these things become a lot easier to figure out. Now, you know that we've been talking a lot about simple shapes, and I wanted to point something out about ellipses. Ellipses are circles, as we've indicated, but guess what? Circles always fit inside of a perfect square. So if you have a cylinder laying on its side, it's going back in perspective. You can draw a square box going back in perspective and fit your cylinder inside of that. That's a little advanced work, and we're going to start out a lot more simply. So find a fresh, clean piece of paper and just follow along with me on a few exercises to get you rolling with drawing really good ellipses. So we've established that ellipses are circles that are tilted away from us, and that's when the circle becomes an ellipse. But ellipses are also symmetrical, always symmetrical. They do not have points on the left and right hand sides. That is a common mistake that a lot of beginners make. They are not lemons. The best way to draw an ellipse is to get moving like this. And that's movement of your whole arm, not just your fingers. And the edges, the ends, should be circles, curved. They should not be points like a lemon. The image on the right is absolutely wrong. They are also not marshmallows, especially marshmallows spelled correctly. So again, a good ellipse drawn with the entire arm, which is very important, has curved left and right hand sides. A marshmallow has a squared off end. So it's not a rounded square. So ellipses are not lemons, they're not marshmallows. Let's practice. We're going to get a fresh piece of paper to work on and our pencil and eraser. And we're going to start first with what is natural. So, what is your natural way right now of drawing an ellipse? And don't worry about how funky it ends up, because we're going to use that to our advantage to learn how to get them to be a little bit more accurate. You're going to draw from your elbow. I'm really serious about this. Have that whole lower arm moving in the elliptical curve, okay? Don't draw just with your fingers in your hand and your whole lower arm is completely still. No, you're drawing completely from your elbow, okay? Like this. I'm really serious about that. You're going to be able to draw better ellipses if you follow this instruction. You're going to get your arm moving in an elliptical kind of circular way, and then you're going to drop that pencil down on the ground and keep moving. So you're going to draw multiple lines. That's okay. Draw smaller ones, larger ones. If you can make a wider minor axis, that's the up-down proportion, that's great. In other words, if you can make them fatter, make them fatter. If you can make them thinner, make them thinner. But draw from your elbow. The second thing we're going to do is make a thinner minor axis on purpose. So this is the minor axis right here, the up-down measurement, the top bottom, or the height, you might call it. That's your minor axis. And the other axis is your major axis. This is the one going from left to right on the ellipse, or you might call it the width or the length of the axis. So you want to make a thinner, minor axis with the rest of the ellipses that you draw here on this page. So this means you have to kind of consciously make that loop a little tighter. Remember, you're drawing from your elbow and you're letting that whole lower arm move. It's not just your fingers or your wrist, okay? So see if you can get these to be thinner ellipses than the ones that you drew above these. So ellipses are not easy to draw. And the reason we're doing this page is so you can start to see what are some of your natural tendencies are right now. Like you can see every once in a while, I actually make a point. And we said that ellipses don't have a point, but it happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to those of us who are experienced. But knowing what your tendencies are, if you tend to make them kind of more like marshmallows or more like lemons, if you have a hard time making them symmetrical, these are really good things to know so that you can work on those aspects of making them much more realistic. So now we're going to make a thicker major axis, or I guess really what I'm trying to say is a longer major axis. So we're going to make them much longer than we've been making them. And you can see I've been in pretty much the same range of size from left to right. So what does a really big one feel like to draw? Is it easier? Is it harder? Is it less symmetrical, more symmetrical? See what just happens naturally when you try to draw a much larger ellipse, whether it's got a smaller minor axis or a larger minor axis. And there you can see I made another point. It happens to all of us. Spend a few minutes making some notes about your drawings. Do you see some tendencies? For example, is one side always a point? Is there a certain size of the major or minor axes that you draw? Is there a place where you make a bump or a valley in the drawings? Whatever you notice, make a note of it. It's going to be important information for later. So grabbing a fresh sheet of paper, we're going to draw some ellipses. And again, draw from your elbow, not from your wrist or your fingers. And you're going to notice that one side or the other looks a little better. Choose the side that looks better and draw a nice crisp line where all your sketchy lines are. Pick the line that feels like it's most accurate. So now you have half an ellipse. The trick is to make it symmetrical, to make the other side feel as good as the side you just chose. So you can draw a major axis, and this has to be through the center. So you could measure from top to bottom to find that center. And I'm measuring this way to find the up down or the minor axis line. And that can really help me figure out how to make it more symmetrical, right? So we have the minor axis going up and down, major going left, right. And this is the side that feels good to me. So now I have to mirror that on the other side. Now, this takes eye-hand coordination. Some of us are better at it than others. Do your best, but I'm going to try to draw this other side as if it's symmetrical to this side. Now, one way to do it is to erase the lines that are there so that you're not tempted to just follow what's already drawn, but instead to mirror what you see on the opposite side of the minor axis. So we're going to do this several times. I'd like you to do 8 of these actually, because this practice is helping your eye-hand coordination when it comes to ellipses. It's helping you remember how important it is that they're symmetrical. It's helping you see it as symmetrical so that you can draw them as symmetrical. So even though this might feel tedious, I promise you that it's helping your brain learn this information. So yes, I said to draw 8 of these, at least 8 of them. Making sure that you're always drawing them from your elbow, not your wrist or your fingers. There's a fun way you can check your work, and that is to grab a piece of tracing paper and lay it on top of the ellipse that you just drew and trace the side that you thought was the really good side, the side that was working better than the other side. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm drawing my minor axis. Now I'm going to flip this tracing paper over, put it on top, and see how well did I do on the left side. And you can see I'm a little bit off. So now I have an opportunity that I can go back in, erase, and fix. I'm going to do the same thing on this ellipse, tracing what I think is the good side of the ellipse and marking my minor axis so that I can flip the tracing paper over and check my work. Now I'm seeing that I keep making the opposite side too short. I'm not making long enough. So that's really good for me to know that I have that tendency so that I can watch out for that. So do 8 of these, and then in the next video, we're going to put all of this to work in some actual drawings of actual round objects. See you soon.